go ahead and hit record so that I don't forget. I'll mention that if there is anything that you want to repeat or you kind of get started talking, you say, oh, I want to backtrack and, scratch that. Let me start over. You're totally allowed to do that.
Oh, thank you.
And we'll edit it out on the back end. Are you okay on time if we go about 30 minutes? Sometimes
Oh,
we
yeah,
might
yeah,
go a
yeah.
little bit
I
over.
I blocked the whole hour, and
Okay,
so
good.
please, take your time. And I hope you can see me okay because I have multiple monitors here. So this is
Yeah.
my biggest monitor, so I can see you really well.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I record the video, but
Sure.
I haven't figured out how to repurpose it yet. I may use it for some
Uh,
highlights, but it's primarily audio
uh,
for the podcast. So,
yeah, yeah, and it's nice to see your face too. So it feels really good. So I'm
yeah.
really happy that we have the video too.
Perfect. Okay. So, just as an overview, as I mentioned to you in our email conversations, I just like to get to know what your upbringing and your background was like,
Of
and
course.
what are the things that led you to where you are now. And I would love to learn more about what you do. I know a lot of the different roles you played just because of my background. I have no idea what
Oh,
they
that's
are.
that's that's the best.
Uh, and so I'll definitely be asking you about that and just to share with the listeners what it is you do. And I also really want to highlight your dedication to women in tech and
Thank you.
mentorship.
Hmm.
I like to talk about, fearing failure and how to get up from disappointments, work-life balance. You have children?
I do. I have two children. Yes.
Okay, so so I'll ask you a little bit about just like family life and
Yeah.
how we
Hmm.
so-call balance work and life, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and then at the end, I'll just ask you a little bit about, advice for other women who maybe want to follow in your footsteps. And then we'll wrap up by having you share where our listeners could keep up with what you're up to online,
Awesome.
and you can list
Hmm.
your social media handles, etc. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And before the way that it'll be edited, I'll do kind of a monologue intro based on your bio and kind of give a little bit of background, and then we'll jump into
Oh,
our part.
awesome.
Okay. So
Sounds
I'll just
great.
record that separately. Okay. And let me make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Is
Hmm.
it Huma or Huma?
Huma. Huma.
Huma
Hmm.
Abidi.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
All right. Huma. All right. Okay. So we'll pause for a second and then we'll start.
Okay.
Well, Huma, I am so excited to have you here on the 6% with the NCMD. We've been talking about having you on
Hmm.
for a while, and here we finally are, and I'm thrilled. I've really, really been looking forward to this.
Thank you, Nancy. And before we get started, I really want to thank you and the other healthcare, frontline workers for the incredible work that you do always, and especially now during the pandemic. And on top of that, you're continuing to take out time to do this podcast to inspire young women, and giving positivity, hope, going back to normal way of thinking and life. So thank you, Nancy.
Oh, thank you. That means so much to me. I appreciate it. So I wanted to dive in a little bit on, we'll start with what you do, but I also will, as promised, go way, way, way back and talk about
Hmm.
the kind of your upbringing and how that shaped you into who you are. But you are at Intel. You've been there
Hmm.
for some time. You're a senior director of AI and deep learning.
Hmm.
And you've worked in the areas of engineering, validation, management roles in the area of compliers, binary translation, artificial intelligence, AI, and deep learning. And so I'm obviously not very well educated in these areas. And so I'm asking for me, as well as some of those members of the audience who maybe are less familiar with the work that you do. So can you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So as you said, I'm senior director of AI of AI, artificial intelligence software products at Intel.
I'm going to
First
pause
team,
because
there are
our
goal
signal is not
is to
good. I think I'm
deliver
losing you a little bit.
world-class
So Huma, I think I've lost you and I cannot hear you and the screen is frozen. Can you hear me? I'm going to type a message to you because I think we're frozen. So we may need to disconnect and reconnect. Need to disconnect and reconnect. Okay, so, oh, lost you there. Okay.
there's 4 using the with, so it is possible.
Yeah. Well, now I can hear
Yeah.
you fine.
But you're still hearing me okay, Nancy?
Yes. Well, let me do this
Okay.
just in case.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize. I'm going to send you a quick text message so you have my cell phone, and that way we can text each other if we get disconnected. What's your number?
Good idea. 408 221 3970.
Okay. I'm just texting you, and that way we can text each other if we get disconnected or if I start or if the sound goes away, I'll let you know so you don't
Good
keep
idea. Good
talking to a
idea.
blank screen. All right. So the sound
Yeah, no,
seems
I have no problems, but I'm sorry.
Oh, no
Mhm.
worries. Okay, so the sound is good. I don't think I'm hearing any of that distortion as before. So
I
we'll
see.
go back and you can start again. I just asked about your different roles and that
Mm-hmm.
that I
Mm-hmm.
want to know more about the work that you've done. So go ahead
Yeah.
and start
Yeah.
anytime.
Yeah. Okay. So my job, as you mentioned, is that I'm senior director of AI products at Intel, and I lead a globally diverse team of engineers, technologists, and our job is to deliver world-class deep learning, machine learning, all in the realm of AI, artificial and intelligence products, and that enable our customers to create all kinds of different AI solutions. And we can talk about that if we have time. I mean, AI is everywhere these days. But as you also mentioned, I joined Intel as a software engineer, out of college. So this was my first job, and I've been here, for a couple of decades. And I have, again, as you mentioned, done different types of engineering roles and early on, in about 6-7 years into my job, I became a manager. And so I have done all kinds of compilers, binary translation. But for the past few years, I've been focused a lot in the artificial intelligence area.
So, can you tell us, for the listeners,
Mhm.
maybe, for if there were an idiot's guide to software engineering. So, what's a compiler? What's
Yeah.
binary translation? And maybe just kind of a loose, broad definition of artificial intelligence, even.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so if you write a software code, you need to compile it in order for it to run. So Intel has a huge compiler team, and most of the products, the software products that we have here at Intel, the idea is to make it work well on our hardware. So the optimization is the focus of everything we do, including deep learning or binary translation. And these are all software products. And Intel, as you know, is the hardware company. And so we have all kinds of hardware from like a small piece on IoT or that kind of small piece of hardware to all the way to server. So from
Mhm.
edge to server. So we have all kinds of hardware. And one of my roles and the people who are writing software at Intel is to make sure that the software, any software, performs really well on Intel hardware. So that's what our focus is most of the time. And deep learning, especially as I mentioned, is the area that I've been working for the longest or recently. And deep learning is like everybody is using AI, whether you know it or not, whether it's Siri or whether it's Google Maps or in healthcare, especially. It's really getting a lot of attention, and it could be, in drug discovery, or it could be identifying MRI. So it's really exciting. It's really exciting to work on this on AI, where the solutions vary. This is one of the most exciting projects that I have worked on, because it's not just one area. It could be education, it could be defense, it could be consumer, retail, healthcare. It's pretty much everywhere.
And so potentially really broad implications for the
Very
work that
broad.
you're doing there.
Hmm.
Now, as I mentioned before, I always like to go way, way, way back and talk a little bit about your origin story, because I think it's really interesting to hear about how people grew up and what their
Hmm.
childhood was like and who their influences were and how all of that came together to take them to where they are now. So, can you take me back to what your childhood was like and who your influences and role models were?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a very small town in India, and my dad was an engineer. Mother was a teacher. I'm a teacher, is always a teacher. And the good part of it was that my parents encouraged both my sister and I, just as they encouraged my brother, to pursue science. They were both very much into it. And so I was always interested in science, and science fiction was interesting, and all that stuff. So maybe that's why the engineering part was there. However, there were not that many role models as for women engineer. There were a few
Mhm.
doctors that we knew, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to become a doctor. And I actually did my bachelor's in chemistry and pre-med. And just then I got introduced to computers, and
Mhm.
I learned to program. And I remember it was a very expensive course, and my mother paid the full amount. And she's like, you know what, this is what you want to do, go ahead and try it. And I loved it so much. And make a long story short, I ended up with master's in computer science from University of Massachusetts. And then the first job out of school was a software engineer at Intel, and I'm still here. So that's how it got started, my interest in science, and coming to Intel as such. The role models, as you said, my mother certainly was and still is a great role model for somebody, being. So she had very good education. My mother, in
Mhm.
60s in India, she did, postgraduate, and she was first in her class. So that part was there. So she understood the importance of education, and
Mhm.
my father too. So I have to, even though we're a small town, and few people and whatever, but my parents were very, very keen on getting us good education, and then depending on the interest, we could move forward with that.
I think that I have found a very common theme among a lot of the women that I talk to, that
Hmm.
parental attitudes are incredibly important. And for example, one of the Team Canada hockey players that I spoke to, and the Major League Baseball coach, one of the commonalities was that the parents never treated the girls any different than the boys, and
Exactly.
never said, well, you're a girl, girls don't do that. But I'm interested in hearing from you your perspective on this. You have a Southeast Asian background. i
Hmm.
i am Chinese in
Hmm.
ethnicity, and for me personally, the first time I thought I wanted to go into medicine, when I first started college, was for the wrong reasons. And so I took a circuitous route and didn't get into medical school until almost 30. And the first time around,
Hmm.
I went pre-med because I thought that was what it was expected
Hmm.
culturally, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I
Hmm.
still ended up there, but I think
Hmm.
that definitely influenced me. But I'm also curious about your perspective on sometimes within Asian cultures and as in some Southeast Asian cultures, there is a certain expectation for the role of the woman. And
100%
and
right. Mhm.
how did you reconcile with that? And how does one reconcile with that without saying, well, I'm going to eschew everything about my culture?
Mhm.
Where do you find that middle ground where you can be successful and have a career, but yet um, still hang on to so many parts of your culture?
That's a really fantastic question because I struggle with it even now.
Hmm.
You still have to be, a good daughter-in-law. You still have to do those things, but you can.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. And to start off with, my again, as I said, my mother, she was very progressive. I will say, woman ahead of her time. So even though it was there, as I mentioned, she was like, okay, this is expensive. This is something different. You may not become a doctor, but you can do something which is interesting because I think you are very smart. And so she let me do that, and because of that, once I had that programming skill, and then I went for my further career for studies, and I was able to do that. So I was lucky that my mother believed in that, and she was
Hmm.
educated, and she did that. So that is true, and then the same thing I'm applying to. I have a son and a daughter,
Hmm.
and I think I pushed both of them graduated. My daughter just graduated from college,
Hmm.
and both of them have major computer science. My son is computer engineering, my daughter is computer science, and I think I pushed my daughter more towards science than I did. It is a fact if you ask my kids.
Right,
And I
right.
did, because I was like, Alina, I go and uh, preach, and I tell all the women, all the girls in high schools and elementary school, middle school, please look at science. Science is important. There are such few of you, and my own daughter. So the compromise is that my daughter did minor in journalism. She loves languages, and in fact, she's working at Duolingo, her first job, languages and computer science combined. And my son did a minor in cinematography screenwriting at USC and major in computer
Fantastic.
science. So anyway, so my point is that I also encourage my kids to pursue whatever, but it wasn't that my son has to do this and my daughter has to do that. And to your point, my son loves to cook. So for Thanksgiving, he single-handedly made the meal for us, and he was the one
That's
who did
amazing.
all the cooking. And so we have to change the norm, what however much that we can. And I'm seeing with the next generation, my family back in India are
Hmm.
also changing a lot. And so there were many times that you have to take a stand, or make people understand. But I basically think that if women are educated, women can make a difference, and it goes from there. The mother's education and upbringing, and what she brings to the table, plus a supporting spouse.
Right.
So along with that, I think we can make the difference.
And so you talked about your two children. They're grown now, and
Hmm.
I would love to hear your thoughts on the maybe mythical work-life balance. And they're kind of different ways to talk about that, right? And
Hmm.
the most frequently heard is work-life balance. But is there
Hmm.
such a thing? And what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's again a very, very good question. All your questions are fantastic. Something that I think about a lot and have dealt with. So work-life balance only works if you have a spouse or somebody who's supportive, a manager at work who's supportive. And I just did a interview with the Authority magazine, and it came out yesterday. And I'll share a very short story with you, which they had asked, and I had
Please.
yeah. And that story was that um, my son was in kindergarten, and you know that he's graduated from school now. So that was a very long. I'm from college now, so it was a very long time ago. And he was late 5 minutes to kindergarten. And I was so stressed out. I was so stressed out that I'm doing something wrong. And I called my husband on the phone and I am like, he's late to school. I don't know what's going to happen. And then the whole day I was stressed out. And I came home and I found that this little, gift wrap on my bedside table. And then I opened it and it was a book. Those days you could go and buy books, right? So he brought a book
Right.
and the book said, "Don't sweat the small stuff." And it's all small stuff. This was a book by
Yeah.
Richard Carlson.
Yeah.
And just the title made me realize that, this is a small thing. This is not the end of the world. So that, I mean, so long ago that made a profound impact on the way I thought, started thinking that, you
Right.
need to figure out, you need to prioritize what is important to you.
Right.
And so that helped. That is one thing. The other thing also, thanking my husband for that, because I remember I was stressed out about something at work, and I think I snapped at my son saying something, and then I told my husband and my son that you understand, right? Because you guys, your family, and I had this stress from work. And my husband says, really, the people that you love and the people that you care about, you are more worried about people at work than the people that you love. And since then, I mean,
Mm.
I know when I had to be, firm with my kids, but I did never yelled at them because I was stressed out or something. Because
Right.
this is your family, these are your people. And I mean, I love my people at work as well, but what I'm trying to say is that that's work, and I have to be nice to them, and as a result, if I'm not as nice to my family, then that's not right.
Right.
So I think those are, those were principles, or foundations that I hold very dear to. And on the flip side, those networking and lunches that happen at work, I don't even remember when, now it's different. I have lunch meetings, but even when I was starting my career, I could never take lunch breaks and sit with people and, talk about it. I mean, I would be, when the kids were, when I had a baby and I'm pumping and I'm breast
Mhm.
milk and I'm doing all kinds of stuff. And when I have time, I'm like, okay, what's, where, when to drop off the kid for the sport or piano lesson or whatever. So for a woman, you take care of the family somewhat, and especially coming back to work after having children. So of course there were, those kind of things that, especially, the male, in any case, there are so many men in places that I work with, and I could be networking and, talking to them, but I would rather spend my time working or doing something else. So it's for each individual, you have to figure out what your balance is. And in my case, this is how I handled it.
Right. Right. And I think those are really, really wise. There are lots of wise nuggets in there for how to achieve that. And just thinking about what's important or what fits your values, I think is key. I would like to ask you a little bit about one of the transitions you had made at work, and that was going from perhaps the purely technical side to being more involved with managing people.
Mhm.
And tell me what was the hardest part about making that transition, and maybe what was the best part?
Sure, sure, sure. So I would start with, how to fit in when I joined. I am a woman of color with accent, so it wasn't really easy, just to fit in and figure out when I joined. And almost all in the beginning, I was the only woman in a lot of those meetings. Once in a while, there would be somebody else, but most of the time. So in the beginning it was very intimidating, and also I am not aggressive by nature. So
Hmm.
it's just, plus not to mention the imposter syndrome and all of that combined. So the first year or so was very difficult. It was like,
Right.
do I know this stuff, am I doing it right? But but I focused on my work, and
Hmm.
once my work was good, that gives you a lot of confidence, right? That okay,
Right.
my work speaks for itself. And so once I started showing my work, some good ideas, leadership qualities, so it kind of happened organically that I became lead of the team. And then when the opportunity happened, then they asked me if I would like to be a manager, and I was kind of doing that job anyway, making a difference. And instead of, I also remember something that in the beginning a lot, I mean, even a couple of my managers, even after became a manager, I was told that I was too nice.
Mm.
I needed to be more aggressive. And we had used to have performance review, and year after year I got that. And then finally I got the courage and I said, what if I don't want to change myself? I used to say, yes, yes, I'll work on it. And I am like, you know what? I'm not going to work on it. This is how I am. I should not change myself, just for the sake of it. I am doing okay. And if that's a problem, I'll take the risk of not moving ahead if that's what it takes. But I'm not going to change
That's
myself.
amazing.
And so that worked really well for me because
Right.
I am very approachable. And a lot of people, and the we can talk about how many women I mentored, and what all that stuff I did. But even
Mhm.
men, there was a
Mhm.
lot of people who came to me and said, you're really nice to work with, and my team will work with your team or whatever. So of course
Right.
I'm not a pushover, and I'm not going to just say yes or whatever, but you don't have to be mean, and you don't have to yell and scream. And back, I mean, I've been there over 2 decades, right? People used to, yell and scream, and the more you scream, the so I've had to do that. But I'm really happy looking back that I didn't have to. I'm sure I changed, but I didn't have to be mean or anything. So I take pride in that.
I love that. And I'm curious because you mentioned that at first you would say, "Yes, yes, I need to yeah, I will work
Mhm.
on this." How long did it take for you to get to the point to actually stand up and say, "No, you can take me as I am. This is what works for me."
It took a long time. I would say almost 10 years into my career, 7, 8, 10,
Yeah.
something like that. It did
Yeah.
because I believed, I thought that's what the right thing to do. If I'm here in this culture, male dominated culture, and or this is how it works, and this is how you show yourself to be strong, and this is how people listen to you. So
Mhm.
not only that, I started doing that, and I even today I do that. And if there's a woman or even men whose voice is not being heard, I will stop and say, can this person speak, please? I want to
Right.
listen to the person, because it's not a myth. It happened all the time that somebody meekly mentioned something at the same idea presented by somebody else who's saying it
Mhm.
forcefully. And there's a lot of us who have accents, or we don't cannot articulate, but that doesn't mean your idea is bad. And especially in engineering, right? This is a
Right.
job. So one of the key things is to listen to everybody. I acknowledge everybody who's joined the meeting. I would say hi to everybody if there is time or whatever. And then I will say, okay, this person hasn't said anything. Is there anything you want to say? So being inclusive, making sure that everybody is accounted for, or listened to, that makes a big difference.
Yes, I would imagine so. And and you mentioned mentorship. So in in VentureBeat in 2020 and 2019, you were a finalist and in 2020 also nominated for the Women in AI Award in Mentorship. Why, first of all, congratulations. So why
Oh, thank
why do
you.
you think mentorship is so important?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? So I think that in the beginning, I felt that I didn't have as much of mentorship, especially coming from women. And
Hmm.
there was a very senior woman at Intel, and at one time she said something which is kind of funny, but it's kind of true also. She said, if you cannot find women of a female manager, find a man who has daughters, because
Mm,
that man wants to see a world where women succeed. And so it just so happens after that the male managers I had have daughters, but I tell my current manager all the time, that's why I'm in your group. But leaving that aside, whether they have daughters or sisters or whatever, the kind of people who respect women, and they understand that they are little, maybe you need a specialist, a little bit of a push, or understand what, for example, if you have a baby, then how do you, when you come back, it's difficult. So all those things a woman can understand, but even men. So I think finding both a mentorship from both men and women is very important. You cannot always find a woman to help you. So that's what I did when I was starting off. There were few women, so I found very wonderful men managers and senior people who gave me a lot of advice. And not only that, I also approached women who were not necessarily in engineering. There was a
Mhm.
we in marketing. We were in a class together and we hit it off. And I would go to her for all kinds of. Her name was Nancy as well, Nancy Bhagat, and so I would go to her for all kinds of advice, and she was fantastic. Then I had people outside of work, so I found a way to find people who were mentors, and in return, this is something I'm very passionate about. I created a team, a group called Women in Machine Learning, and it has like hundreds of women at Intel who are doing this. And I actually started that during the pandemic, because that week I had a couple of women reach out to me, and one of them was literally in tears that I don't know how to handle this. I have children at home. I have to finish the work,
Oh.
and those kind of things. And that week, two of them, and the next week another two. So I told my boss, I'm going to create this forums exclusively for women, and we are not only going to talk about technical issues, we are also going to talk about mindfulness. We're going to talk about how to handle the issues that you have, how to work life balance, or how to handle, how to have. And I told all of them, reach out to me. I will talk to your manager. If you have certain times you don't want meetings, or you want to work part-time or whatever, I'm there to help you. So I have done that my entire career. It's open to pretty much, at least at Intel, women who can reach out to me for an advice, or I can be their mentor. And given that, whatever time I have, I have tried to do as much as I can, both outside at and inside of Intel. And whenever there's a school that reaches out to me, or there's a society or an organization or whoever reaches out to me and say, we would like to talk to you. Can you talk to this set of girls, even elementary school girls? I'm always happy to go there and do it, because I really believe that there should be role models, and there should be people who should be guiding these, especially the young girls and women, and to show them that there is a lot of out there. Don't have this negative impression of science, that it's boring, and you just sit in a corner and you're a nerd and you just do that. There is a lot more to that. Yeah, I
Right?
had to convince a lot, and especially since AI, now you can see, which movie to select from
Mm.
Netflix, and series telling you this, that. So I go and tell them, what, all of that is happening because of AI. So it's not just a boring software program. It actually makes a difference.
Right. Well, oops, sorry. I lost my screen for 1 second. We'll edit this part out.
Sure.
I
Sure.
I really love that, and I appreciate that, and I think there's so much value in thinking about mentorship, both from the mentee and the mentor side, to not just be in an echo chamber with women only. I think that, and also only in within your specific field or subspecialty or your own department. And I think when you have broad representation in
Mm.
both your mentees and your mentors, it gives you such a higher level broad view of things. And so
Yeah.
I see so much
Yeah.
value in that. I
Absolutely.
I am curious if someone has ever told you in your career endeavors and with your goals, told you no. You can't do this? And when did you listen and when did you not listen?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think about it. So I've been told that I am wrong quite a few times, that,
Hmm.
whatever approach that I'm going to do, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because I tell you so. And it could be a manager, it could be my managers have usually been very good, but there have been, I mean, I have in my career, I have come across with very difficult people as well, and they will make you feel like you are not as smart as me. You are not
Hmm.
technical enough. And of course, they
Hmm.
won't say that is because you're a woman,
Uh-huh.
but because you don't yell and scream. So there have been times that, so I have learned to, being as old as I am, I have learned to pick my battles. And in those times, so when it didn't, work out and it wasn't going anywhere, I said, okay. And then I reached out to their manager and said that I have a very hard time uh, dealing with this person. And
Hmm.
at that time I was manager, so I would bring my technical, person who was knew more than I did, and I said, okay, let's have a meeting where if I don't know something, this person in my team will know.
Hmm.
So I dealt with it in different ways, and I'm happy to say that I was able to. But to answer your question, it is never okay. I don't remember. I mean, there are different ways how I dealt with it, but it was never okay if somebody just says no and I just take it like that. I would try my best, and only when I'm convinced that this is not right, I would back off.
How do you know when you're on the right path personally and professionally, as far as operating in a zone where you're obviously a high level professional and doing good versus next level up being in kind of your genius zone where everything is aligned and you're truly using all of your gifts? How does one know how to get there and whether they're there? Tough question.
It's very tough. All your questions are fantastic, but they're not easy. They're not easy, but there's not nobody can prepare for these questions, and
Right,
I have to
right.
think back. And I'm sorry, they may not be perfect answers, and but I will give it my best
No,
shot.
that's okay.
So it is very difficult. You know what you want to do is in your own mind. You should have an idea. You know what your 5-year goal is, what your 2-year goal is, or what you want to be there. And it's not easy because it changes. Things change and whatever. So in your mind, you should have. Let's talk about work first, and then I will talk about personal. So also I also think that as you said, South Asian culture where it's not good to brag about yourself and let others say good things about you. Like my parents wouldn't say it and wait for others to say your
Mhm.
daughters are so good, right? So that thing was there. It cannot just overnight, you cannot change it. So I still have a very hard time to say, oh, I did this and I did that, and it just feels like you're showing off. So that part was at least earlier in my career, I would never ever think of asking for a promotion. I would never think about asking. I would just think I'm doing my job, and they would know that I'm good, and they would give me this role. Right? That's how it's supposed to work. But it doesn't work like that because this is I've heard it somewhere, and I think it's very true that between a guy and a girl, and this is true with my own kids. I see we brought them up exactly the same way. My son has so much more confidence than my
Mm.
daughter.
Mhm.
And so if somebody else mentioned this, and I agree with that, is that if there's a job rec and there are 10 things you're supposed to know, a man knows 3 or 4 of them. He's so confident that I'll be able to do it. And the women you have to convince, it's just my own experience. But you know
Right.
it so well, but yeah, but I don't know these 2 things. How am I going to do? Right? So that thing for me to ask for a promotion or say that I am ready for my next level, it came much later in my career.
Mhm.
I mean, I was doing well, and so thanks to good managers, and sometimes it took, like 5, 6 years to get a promotion, whatever. But later on, when I had more choices, I could decide, what I want to do, whether, what other options I have. So, I got educated, I got good mentors, and that happens. It comes at a later life in your career when you are, number one, quite confident. You build your own brand, you know your own value, you know that you don't need to change yourself. So that happens. And happy to say that I am right now very confident. I know what I want to do. Managers are supportive and all of that. That wasn't the case in the beginning. So to know now at this point, I know what I want to do in the next year, where I want to go with this and all that. But it takes time. And more you talk to people, more mentors and sponsors you have. The difference between mentor and sponsor is the sponsor will stand up for you and say, I know this person, this person is great, you should give them this job. Where mentor could be, anybody and can give you advice. So you need to find sponsors, you need to build your own brand, you need to really figure out what you want to do in life. In the personal life, I think um, if I had to pick one thing I did well in my life, I would say it's my children. I mean,
That's
and
great.
especially they came back home, and the only one really positive thing that came out of pandemic was that I got to spend time with my children again.
That's
And
amazing.
and it is wonderful. I mean, there's four of us, every simultaneously, everybody's in a meeting, this happening, that happening. We meet for dinner, we meet for lunch, we have conversations, we have share food and all that. And I see how they are, talking to their peers and their managers and their work. And I am so proud that these are good kids. So it
Right.
was never easy. I worked my entire life when I had the kids, and with my husband, I feel like I really feel very blessed that my kids are good kids.
Well, I think I love hearing that, and maybe you read my mind because I was going to ask you as my next question.
Hmm.
I feel like time flies faster the older that we get, and
Hmm.
for myself personally, I really start thinking about legacy. And
Yeah.
our time here is short, and it's as
Hmm.
evidenced, if you have children and you're watching them grow up, and all of a sudden, one moment you're carrying them on one hip, and the next moment they're like you, they're
Hmm.
working from home, in their first jobs, and
Yeah.
what can we leave behind when we're gone, and what do you see as your legacy? With the time that you've created, with the time that you're here on this earth, what would you
Hmm.
like to see
Hmm.
as that?
Um, one thing that I shared a few values that we have at home, right? That don't sweat the small stuff and those kind of things. Being kind. I feel like I think that it's, as I said, being aggressive and all that. I was never like that. I was just being yourself. So being yourself, being kind to people, and we learned so much. This COVID-19 has taught us so much, and so we've seen all kinds of things happening, and with the politics and whatnot. So what I would love to for my kids to carry on with would be that the way they saw us, my husband and I treat ourselves, our children, and everybody else around us. So I feel like being respectful to people, being kind to people, and plus doing what you like. So as I said, that I kind of push my children to do engineering, and they happen to
Mhm.
like it. But my son is sitting in the spare time, he keeps writing these screenplays, and my daughter is doing all kinds of
Yeah,
things. So enjoy what you are doing, be kind to people, and be yourself.
that's wonderful advice. I think
Thank you.
those are great pearls for really anybody, but especially for a woman who hopes to follow in your footsteps, for example. I think those are all important things to live by. I would love it if our listeners could keep up with you and all of the amazing
Sure.
things that you're doing. And so if they want to do so, how do they do that online?
Yeah, so I have a Twitter account, Huma Abidi. And same on LinkedIn. That's where I post, things. I want to be more active and I need to do more, but that's where I am, most active. And one thing I forgot to mention, Nancy, when I was saying love what you do,
Yes.
I something that I picked up during. Not I kind of used to draw and paint all that, but during this time of pandemic, I was able to do a lot of artwork, and what I did was something unique was that I combined art with AI. It's called neural style transfer,
Oh.
and that basically converts you can choose your art and merge it with say a Monet's art, or some Starry Nights or something,
Uh-huh.
Van Gogh, and it comes up with fantastic things. So the reason I mention it now is that I posted it on Twitter and LinkedIn, and that got a lot of hits, and people liked it a lot. So coming back to, sorry, I digressed, but coming
No,
back to
not at all.
to your point that I'm not super active, but when I do something like that, then I love to post and I love to do that. So Twitter as well as LinkedIn are the two places that I'm I mean,
Well,
somewhat active.
well, I know I'm going to go look for that, and I'm gonna have to retweet it because that sounds amazing. I haven't seen it
That's
yet.
no, I'll send it to you.
Well, Huma, I've really enjoyed having you on today. I personally learned so much, and I was also just so inspired and so touched by all of your insights and all of your amazing pearls for just how to be, whether it's as a professional or as an individual, how to be. I think there are a lot of great lessons in there. And so thank you again for being on the 6% with Nancy MD. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I know our audience will love listening to this episode.
Thank you, Nancy. And I started off saying thanking you, and I will end with thanking you for you and the other frontline workers for the amount of work, the selfless work that you've done. When I wear a mask and I go just for shopping, I feel like it's difficult, and then I think about you and others who have to wear it and doing the work. So really, really thank you for that, and also for doing this, which is very close to my heart.
Thank you. That means so much to me. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Nancy.
Okay. Well, I'm going to press pause